Welcome to this episode of No Free Lunch, Economics for a Fallen World. We're continuing our conversation about trade. Dr. Heyman, the question for this episode is, how important is trade in the U.S., trading with other countries?
Yeah, trade is very important for us, less important than for some. We're not a humongous exporter. For instance, we're not like Hong Kong, which would be very much an export kind of led economy. But yet it's much larger. I think a good historical chart might illustrate some of this. What you'll see here is the percent trade as a percentage of GDP since 1970. It's a pretty small font, but you can see the upward. I'll give you some of the numbers there. It's in the book for those that want to check out the book. But in 1970, trade was about 10% of our economy. And today it's a little over double that, about 27% of the economy. So that's a large part of our economy is associated with either importing or exporting goods. And you can see the bottom chart is just a percentage change. We've had some fairly dramatic, upwards of 4 or so percent growth in trade, some big negatives like when the financial crisis happened. But it shows that despite some fits and starts, trade has been steadily increasing. We have had a lot of trade barriers that were reduced in the aftermath of World War II, as trade restrictions were widely seen as contributing to the severity of the Great Depression. And that global growth in trade, shipping costs came down. One of the most amazing things that I think about, which has really revolutionized trade, is just packaging technologies. When I was a young boy, I could remember getting the packages from Japan. Japan in my era was akin to what China would be today. And about half the time you'd open up the box and it would be broken. And now you get things and it's so packaged well, it's made that arduous trip from halfway around the world, and it's fine. So that's we have a lot more trade, and that's led to a lot of growth in America.
So trade, one country's export is another country's import. And we talk about trade surpluses and trade deficits. Trade deficit is when a country is importing more than it's exporting. And historically, the U.S. has been in that situation. Yeah, and you've got a chart here. Some would say that's a bad thing. Tell us why that's maybe
so
not.
I think this chart will help us think about this. This is a chart since 1970. Again, we've had consistent deficits since that, trade deficits since that time, which would indicate, hey, and I hate this because it's the very terminology is what leads us down this path. If you think you have a deficit, can you think of any term where deficit is a good thing?
Doesn't sound
it's usually associated with a negative thing, and so that leads us down the path to think this is negative. And but on the flip side, you have to start thinking, okay, since 1970 we've been doing that. 1970 is like a long time. You and I can remember, yes, but most of you viewers cannot. That's been a long, long time. And so the idea is, and you start looking at the United States as a country and where we are economically, we are so far ahead that those intervening 50 years have been pretty good in terms of increase in productive capacity, increase of quality of our productive goods, and so forth. So maybe we shouldn't just throw trade deficits out automatically as bad, but I think there's a more fundamental way to think about it. And I've got this in the book, and I want to set the stage by talking about it first of all. I have this problem. True confessions on No Free Lunch video chat. I'm such a loser. I keep going into Costco and I buy more of their stuff. I'm running this massive trade deficit with Costco. They never buy any of my economics lessons. I don't know what is going on here. And then they put things on sale and they have these other high quality things and they have these little food tasty items I get to go buy and taste. And I go in there and I lose again. I can't believe I'm such a loser. And that's the way some people would view trade. And of course, we should never expect to have a trade balance with any one particular country. That's an artifact. It really doesn't matter that I have a trade deficit, if you will, with Walmart and Costco and whoever else, and then I run a massive trade surplus with students. At the end of the year, as long as my checkbook clears, I'm in okay shape. And really, it's no more fundamental than that. We shouldn't expect any one country. It would be kind of ludicrous or an accidental if you might be in balance with a particular country. That doesn't obviate the overall issue or concern of trade deficits across all countries, but we need to go one step further, and that's what this chart is going to help walk us through. Typically, the trade deficit or surplus, that's the number you hear talked about by politicians. That's what we call the balance of trade in our national accounting scheme, and that's our net exports, that we can think about that. And that fits into what we call the current account deficit or surplus. That includes the balance of trade, has a couple of other things, some what we call net factor income, which would be kind of what we would get from other countries' income that they don't get from us, and so forth. There's also transfer payments across countries, a couple other categories, but we're really talking about this balance of trade that comes down here. That's what we have here. But here's the key point. The current account is always going to be matched by the capital account in our overall balance of payments. Let me explain how this works. The balance of payments must balance. It always equals zero. If it does not, if you don't have a balance between the current account and the capital account, you're going to get some change in reserves, or your currency must fluctuate and change price, which will cause those things to come back into alignment. And so when we talk about the trade deficit, we're ignoring always in that discussion what's happening on the capital account. And that's good as well. So if we think about foreign investment in our country, then we usually think that's good. We love it when BMW opens up a new car plant in South Carolina. The largest manufacturer, and I'm sorry I cannot pronounce the name of it, but the largest manufacturer of job growth in Dayton, Ohio region over the last X years has been that glass company, the Chinese glass company. It's in the old GM facility downtown. We love it when they come in here and create, there's thousands of jobs now in that factory. And so that's foreign investment in the United States. Well, where they get those dollars to buy that GM factory and re-outfit it to make windshields, I think was what they made, is precisely by us buying some of their stuff in Walmart. And so they can't do investment in America if we don't run a trade deficit. So for instance, Mr. Trump famously, in the first part of his term, was lauding Foxconn's investment up in Minnesota. And he was also saying that he wanted to have a great economy. Well, when you have a great economy, guess what? People want to invest in your country. That means money's going to come here on the capital account. Guess what happens when that money comes here in the capital account? It, by definition, has to have an offset over in the current account. So we need to think a little bit more broadly about this issue, because neither one, they're just differing sides of the coin, because the balance of payments will always balance. We will not be running a deficit, or even that. Markets naturally correct, because the currency has to change value to accommodate that. So
here's a bonus question. Bonus question for you all. Some people would say, oh, a trade deficit, that you hear this plaintive cry, but we don't make anything in the U.S. anymore.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
No. So since 1980, U.S. manufacturing capability has well over doubled. And yet we have significantly cut jobs in the manufacturing industry. That's what they're really concerned about. What that means, and all of you Sharp No Free Lunch audience members know this, we have become very efficient. We've become very productive. That's generally, efficiency and productivity is a good thing, because that releases resources from those kind of jobs to other jobs. And contrary to what people say about manufacturing jobs on average pay less than service-related jobs. They're really good jobs, and people generally enjoy them. I remember, when it hasn't been that many years ago that many people were decrying some of the manufacturing jobs, because it basically had somebody that would do the same repetitive task day in and day out for their whole career. Now, they were union members, well paid, but it really wasn't something that took advantage of the creativity of what people made in the image of God are capable of doing. And I would assert that many of the jobs we have now are leading us more and more to allow people to use their full capacities of what God has given, not just one particular manually dexterous skill that they could do in manufacturing. but we are still quite the manufacturers. Instead of thinking about it of like a 3,000 worker firm making steel up in northern Ohio, it's the usual manufacturing is more like 200 to 300 people, and it's a much more technological process, that we might export those kinds of goods and services.
And those 200 to 300 people might be producing as much, if not more, than in the past, those 3,000.
In value sense, yes,
right.
even if not in physical output, because it's changed output.
Great. Well, thanks for unpacking a few things about trade between the U.S. and other countries. And thank you, the listener, for joining us for this episode of No Free Lunch.